Trumpet players, are you struggling from a thin sound, stuffy lips, sharp intonation, range, and endurance? Keep watching this video because I'm going to break down for you one of the common but one of the most frustrating problems that trumpet players face with our faces. Let's talk about playing in the red. Playing in the red refers to trumpet players who play with the rim of their mouthpiece resting on the fleshy red part of their lip. Basically, if a trumpet player is playing in the red, they're using their mouthpiece to pin down the red of their lip to control the size of their aperture, as opposed to using their surrounding embouchure muscles. So what are the results of playing in the red? Well, for one, the player might be able to squeak out some high notes, but this is purely based on physics. You see, the closer we put the mouthpiece to the top lip, the easier it is to get that top lip to vibrate quickly. It's the physical equivalent of shortening a string in order to play a higher note on a string instrument. And you might be saying to yourself, wow, this playing in the red thing seems like a great way to develop my high notes. Gee, thanks, Freddy. Well, hold on, I'm not done yet, because the long-term effects, the problems of playing in the red far outweigh the short-term ability to squeak out high notes. First and foremost, this setup relies entirely on mouthpiece pressure to control the size of your aperture. When you consider the fact that your top lip is your primary source of vibration on the trumpet, pinning it between your teeth and mouthpiece is going to have some serious consequences for your tone quality. The characteristic sound of someone playing in the red is a thin tone quality, and they typically play sharp, like really sharp. Not to mention the fact that the tissue of your actual lip as opposed to the muscle surrounding is a lot more delicate. So if you're concentrating all of your pressure onto that top lip, you're opening the door for some serious swelling, bruising, and even scarring. So that's what playing in the red is and why it's harmful to our trumpet playing, at least as I see it. I want to talk now about some of my thoughts as to why trumpet players wind up playing in the red in the first place. Now, I am a major nerd when it comes to all things brass pedagogy. It's what I went to grad school for. So this next part is going to be kind of theoretical, which is going to be fun for me to rant. But if you guys are just looking for tips on how to fix your embouchure or whether or not you should actually go through with an embouchure change, I put timestamps in the description because I value your time and you know why you're here. Still with me? Put on your tinfoil hats because it's time to get nuts! In order for any of my theories about playing in the red to make sense, we have to accept a premise stated by Keith Johnson in his book, The Art of Trumpet Playing. Now, one of the overarching themes in this book is that the sound we make on the trumpet starts as a concept in our head, and then our body does what it does naturally to make that sound happen. So in an ideal world where all of our bodies function exactly as they're supposed to function, theoretically we should be able to create any sound that our mind can think of, which is basically the trumpet player equivalent of having a Green Lantern ring. Maybe Keith Johnson was really into DC superheroes. I don't know. But most people have something going on in their bodies under the surface that prevents them from performing optimally. Thus, in order to create the sound that you conceptualized in your head, your body will do something intuitively to make that sound come out, even if it is detrimental to your ability to play the instrument. Whew! With that said, it's theory time. In my experience, both having played in the red in high school and teaching students who play in the red, playing in the red is an easy way for young players to access the upper register. Now, in an ideal world, every trumpet student would be paired with a trumpet teacher who can constantly monitor them and make sure their mouthpiece stays at a perfect 50-50 ratio, or 40-60 ratio if you read The Art of Brass Playing by Farkas. But some students, dare I say, a lot of students, don't have access to private teachers. But I did have a private instructor when I was in high school. In fact, I had a really good teacher. But how did I still wind up playing in the red? If we accept the premise that playing in the red is a shortcut to the upper register, then it stands to reason that there is some kind of deficiency with one or more of our three key ingredients to accessing the upper register, those being our abdominal compression, our intraoral compression, and the firmness of our corners. Now, I will admit that I am convinced that 2 of these deficiencies have a greater impact on us playing in the red, but for the sake of being thorough, I'm going to analyze all 3. Let's start with our abs, or our breathing. Are you using the right amount of support for your sound? Support is one of those nebulous terms that band directors and teachers throw out there that we kind of lose track of what it means. I personally really like the definition of support given in Frank Campos's book Trumpet Techniques, which basically says support is blowing air into your instrument. There's no need to overcomplicate it. If we're playing efficiently, our respiratory muscles should only contract as much as they need to generate the pitch you're trying to make. If we're squeezing our abs too much, we can trigger what's called the Valsalva maneuver. The Valsalva maneuver is a sympathetic closing of the glottis when we engage our ab muscles, like if we're lifting something heavy. Go ahead. Go lift something heavy. Experience the Valsalva maneuver. Okay. If we squeeze our abs too much, our vocal folds will come together, thus limiting the amount of air coming from your lungs up to the trumpet, thus preventing the amount of air that gets to the trumpet and supports your upper register, which theoretically could lead to you maybe bringing your mouthpiece down into the red of your lips to compensate, but I'm more convinced that playing in the red is a direct result of something wrong with your oral cavity or your face muscles. So let's move on to our next potential deficiency that can cause us to play in the red, and that is the oral cavity. The shape and size of our oral cavities, as determined by our tongue and jaw, have a major impact on our ability to navigate the different registers of the trumpet. If we're playing in the middle register, we want to use the vowel ah. This puts our jaw and our tongue in a neutral position, which is ideal for playing our middle register. As we play down into our lower register, we want to think about changing that ah vowel from our middle register into an O vowel. This will cause us to lower our jaw a little bit, creating a little more space, helping us slow down that air, which will help us play our lower notes. But when we play in the upper register, we want our tongue to be nice and high in our mouth like we're saying the letter E. This helps us to create a point of compression in our mouth that will speed up our air as it's approaching the trumpet. This intraoral compression is crucial to being able to play efficiently in the upper register. But what if your tongue can't do its job? What if you are quite literally tongue-tied? I am, medically diagnosed in fact. Being tongue-tied does not just mean tripping over your words, which is something I do anyway, and if you saw the amount of editing I have to do for these videos, you would be very embarrassed for me. A physical tongue tie is actually a birth defect, in which an unusual band of tissue tethers the tongue down towards the bottom of your mouth, limiting the mobility of your tongue. I was shocked when I discovered that I had a tongue tie. Basically, I've been struggling with tongue tension and jaw tension for years now, which had me seek out a special clinic known as orofacial myofunctional therapy. Say that 5 times fast. In fact, for the rest of the video, we will refer to orofacial myofunctional therapy as OMT. Now, my specialist analyzed my tongue across 10 to 12 different primary functions of what the human tongue is supposed to do, and I said, stand back, I got this. Guess how many of those functions my tongue was able to execute? Go ahead. Yes. Drop a comment if you want. Okay, you got your yes? 2! 2 out of the 10 to 12 things my tongue is supposed to do. It can do 2. My graduate lecture recital and thesis were on playing different versions of Carnival of Venice, and my tongue, of all the things the human tongue should be able to do, could do 2 of the things. Now, since my diagnosis back in August or September last year, we've been implementing a physical therapy regimen, which has been helping my tongue develop greater mobility, wherein I've discovered that despite conceptually knowing my tongue needs to rise in my mouth to play in the upper register, and despite telling all of my students in basically every lesson, hey, if you want to access that upper register, say that E vowel, my tongue couldn't do that. So with my medical history in mind, I want you to think of a high school Freddy who can't raise his tongue the way he should, wants to play in the upper register, is struggling and struggling and struggling until he discovers that, hey, if I slip my mouthpiece down to the red of my lip, suddenly I can squeak out high C's and D's, but at the cost of my pitch and my sound. If you have a concept of a sound that you want to make in your head, your body will instinctively do what it needs to do to make that sound, even if it's detrimental to your playing. Let's take a look at our third potential deficiency in our range apparatus, and that's our face muscles. In order to develop our upper register on trumpet, we have to develop these muscles that surround our embouchure. Now, I've already done a video on how to do this in a healthy way, which you should totally check out after this video, but basically if our embouchure muscles are weak, they won't be able to resist the force of the air coming out of our bodies, and then our lips won't vibrate. Now, the simple solution to weak embouchure muscles, assuming everything in your body is functioning properly, is just daily, consistent, and efficient practice. You might want to supplement with an isometric exercise like the pencil exercise to build extra strength, but that's it. Just practice. But as we discovered with our oral cavity, not everyone's body is functioning optimally. So when I have a student who's struggling with playing in the red or just generally struggling to consistently play in the upper register, I ask them a weird question. Does your jaw pop when you yawn? And most of the time these students say, well, now that I think about it, yeah. This might seem like a totally random question, totally out of left field, but you might be unknowingly suffering from a jaw condition called TMJ. Now, TMJ stands for, and I'm going to look at my script for this one, the temporomandibular joint in the jaw. How'd I do? If you suffer from TMJ, you probably have problems moving your jaw. It might click, it might pop when it moves, it might pop when you yawn. You might have pain going up from your temples, down by your ears, all the way down your jaw. You might even struggle with facial tension and stiffness, and your jaw might even dislocate. Have you ever locked your jaw? I have. My jaw locked once for 5 hours, and I had to go to the emergency room to have it reset, which is actually one of the instigating factors in me going to see my OMT, which led me to discover my tongue tie and helped me develop my upper register better. So it might have been a good thing? We'll see. Anyway, all of these TMJ symptoms create excess tension in the face, making it difficult to form and hold an embouchure. So if you can't properly form and hold an embouchure, it's going to be difficult to play any notes, let alone high notes. And if your embouchure is not functioning properly, your body is going to find a way to play the notes that you have to play, and before you know it, your mouthpiece is sliding lower and lower until you're playing in the red of your lip. Now, TMJ is a complex issue with many different potential causes and solutions, which I plan on addressing in a future video, but for now, if you think you might be suffering from TMJ, I would start by talking to your dentist. Alright, well that was about 4 pages of my script that I dedicated to pedagogical theorizing about why you might be playing in the red, but you're probably sitting there wondering, well, can you just tell me how to fix it? Or do I even have to fix it at all? Let's discuss. For starters, if you've decided that you want to stop playing in the red and you want to start playing with a more balanced embouchure, I highly suggest you find a skilled trumpet teacher that you can work with. You don't want to be making drastic changes to your playing without the help of a professional. Changing your embouchure is not something that happens overnight, and it can be an extremely frustrating process. But I will say that the long-term benefits of improved tone production, endurance, and range are well worth it if you trust the process. But it is a process. Off the top, you're probably going to lose a chunk of your range. From my experience teaching and playing in the red myself, you may have been able to squeak out notes above the staff, and then you switch your embouchure and you can barely play up to a middle C. That's normal for a change like this. And with time and diligent practice, you'll be able to get those notes back. And by developing a balanced embouchure, you're going to be able to produce a better sound and have a longer, healthier, more successful career as a brass player. I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you are really passionate about playing the trumpet, you want to go to music school, you want to play in an orchestra or a brass quintet, then I highly encourage you to change your embouchure from playing in the red. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's going to suck for a couple months. But long term, it is going to be worth it. But maybe you just play trumpet for fun. You like playing in pep band or a community band, and you don't really see trumpet as being your long-term career. Then it's probably not worth your time to deal with such a frustrating embouchure change. That being said, let's get into the nitty-gritty of how to fix this thing. When I work with a student on an embouchure change for playing in the red, the two primary factors I'm looking at are general tone production and mouthpiece pressure. Because we are moving our mouthpiece, even if it's just by a matter of millimeters, we're gonna have to learn how to use our embouchure muscles differerently. It'll feel like you're learning how to play the instrument all over again, and in a way, you kind of are. You're learning how to control your aperture without just smushing your top lip into your teeth. Now for this whole process, I like to start with my embouchure visualizer and a mirror. This is going to help me see and feel how my embouchure should work. It'll also help me find the optimal position of the mouthpiece where I get the best vibration. From here, I'll switch to mouthpiece buzzing. I'll continue looking at my mirror to confirm my mouthpiece is hitting the right spot. Be especially vigilant when you go to inhale with the mouthpiece. It's extremely common for your lip to return to its old setup on the inhale. You might even want to experiment with nose breathing until you feel really secure about your embouchure placement. I have an exercise on nose breathing in this video on range that I'll link up in the cards. My goal on the mouthpiece is to create a single, steady pitch. I'll also practice bringing the mouthpiece up to my new embouchure placement so I can overcome my old muscle memory and develop new muscle memory of how this embouchure should feel. Once I'm comfortable creating a steady tone, I'm going to start trying to build out a 5-note scale. I start by sliding between my first note and my second note, really focusing on using my face muscles and tongue arch to change pitch as opposed to pressing my mouthpiece. Once I can navigate 2 pitches, I'll add a third, a fourth, and then a fifth. And now that I've got a solid buzz, I'm going to put the mouthpiece into the instrument. My goal here is to just make the best possible sound I can make. I'll also practice bringing the trumpet up to my lips, the same thing I did with my mouthpiece, just trying to reinforce good muscle memory. And just like how I started slowly with a 5-note scale on my mouthpiece, I'm going to do the same thing on my trumpet. You'll probably find that your range isn't as wide as it used to be when you were playing in the red, and that's to be expected. You can use any of the tips on my previous videos on range to start building that back up. But I want to give you a new exercise to help you get control over your embouchure and your aperture. We're doing bent tones. This exercise consists of a series of long tones descending by half step. But instead of fingering down a half step, I'm going to bend the pitch down a half step. The trick is to not let your embouchure relax entirely, but rather to keep the muscles strong as the pitch lowers. You want to focus on holding onto that point of vibration. Your tongue will also help you to maintain pitch as you descend. You should feel your tongue raise in your mouth almost as if you're playing in the upper register. Once you've gotten good at descending bent tones, working down from middle G down to our low C, you're gonna wanna try some ascending bent tones. It's a very similar exercise to our descending long tones, but instead I'm going from middle G up to middle C. I'll start by playing G, G sharp, G, but when I finger the G sharp, I'm gonna lip that pitch down so it matches my G. As you practice this exercise, your goal is to get quicker at matching that bent pitch to your original pitch. With diligent practice, your new embouchure will become comfortable. As you work on your physicality in playing, don't forget to also work on your musicality, because after all, that's why we play the trumpet. I suggest flipping through the Art of Phrasing in the Arbin book to find a melody that works with your range. Now, the biggest thing that I want you to focus on throughout this process is your progress. Don't worry about what everybody else is doing. I've changed my embouchure a handful of times myself, and I know how frustrating it can be comparing yourself to your peers when you're just working on your fundamentals. But here's the thing about playing trumpet. There's no finish line. There's no point that you should or shouldn't be at. We're all just trying to get better than we were yesterday, last week, last month, and last year. And with that, I have given you all of my advice, theories, and wisdom about how to fix playing in the red. If you want even more advice on playing in the red, I highly suggest you check out this video by none other than Charlie Porter. In the video, he discusses his experience playing in the red and how none other than Wynton Marsalis told him to fix it. He has a totally different perspective than what I have, and I definitely think it's worth your time watching. If you found any of my tips or theories useful, make sure you drop a like or a comment down below, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any more of our brass content. We've got some pretty cool Star Wars arrangements coming out next week for May 4th, so you're not going to want to miss them. We'll see you in the next video.